First thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers. I'm Michael Smerconish in Philadelphia. That was Shakespeare 435 years ago. It may as well have been Donald Trump in 2025. You know, that line is often misunderstood. It's not a condemnation of lawyers, but an acknowledgement of their vital role. The character Dick the Butcher says it. He wants to overthrow the government, and lawyers are obstacles because they represent the rule of law. In other words, lawyers are the backbone of a stable society. Nevertheless, lawyers remain an easy target. In January, Gallup released their latest ratings of professions by honesty and ethics. Nurses on top, 76%, regard the profession as high or very high. Only 17% said the same about lawyers. I've often said about trial lawyers in particular, by the way, my full-time profession before a turn to radio and TV hosting, that everybody despises them until they need one. No doubt President Trump respects lawyers, and not just Roy Cohn. Trouble is, he respects them the same way that Dick the Butcher does. Why else would he put the profession at the top of the list of those he is seeking to stifle? It's because he realizes the unique position lawyers can play in thwarting his agenda. After all, Democrats can't stop him. They lack the votes in the House and the Senate. Cory Booker stayed on his feet in the well of the Senate for a record 25 hours and 5 minutes, a true feat of urinary endurance. But in the end, it was simply performative. No, Trump knows that his only true opposition could come from the bar. And that's why he's used executive orders, sometimes as a threat, sometimes in actuality, against several top firms, financially devastating orders that would say the government won't contract with businesses represented by these firms. And it bars access to federal buildings, which apparently means lawyers couldn't go into federal courthouses or have meetings with government lawyers. This is a core legal principle. Lawyers aren't to be punished for their clients or their zealous advocacy. They're protected by the First Amendment, which the executive orders seem to contravene. Think about that. It's akin to denying a surgeon access to an operating room or telling a pilot they can't board the airplane. Those who made the list are a real murderer's row, including Covington and Burling, a firm that assisted Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, who oversaw criminal investigations into Trump; Perkins Coie, a firm that worked with Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign and played a part in commissioning the notorious Steele dossier; Paul Weiss, which was involved in January 6 litigation and had a partner who assisted Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg in his criminal case against Trump; Jenner and Block and Wilmer Hale, which both employed members of Robert Mueller's investigation into Trump and Russian interference in the 2016 election; Willkie Farr, which employs Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, and lead investigator for the January 6 committee, Timothy Hafey. Some of those firms are fighting back. Perkins Coie, Jenner and Block, Wilmer Hale have all won temporary restraining orders blocking Trump's punishments, with courts ruling that these orders are likely unconstitutional. And just last night, hundreds of firms joined Perkins Coie in issuing a court filing known as an amicus brief, denouncing the president's executive orders, saying his actions endanger the rule of law. Some of the nation's largest firms targeted on that list, however, were not part of that filing and are not standing up against lawfare and are already making deals with the Trump administration. Paul Weiss agreed to $40 million in pro bono work and abandoned DEI initiatives. Skadden, not even publicly targeted, struck a $100 million pro bono deal. And recently, Willkie Farr agreed to spend up to $100 million for pro bono clients and causes that are agreeable to the White House. Doug Emhoff reportedly told his firm not to strike that deal. Despite that objection, the message unsaid but implied is that these firms are not going to take on work against the Trump administration. Thus, it appears these firms are letting the president dictate who they'll represent. And now that they've knuckled under once, why wouldn't the president make them do it again? This capitulation is unnecessary. After all, look at the 500 firms that signed on to the amicus brief. So it's all a gut check, a true character check for the legal profession. Stand up for yourself, your colleagues, the Constitution, the rule of law, or surrender and subordinate your role to the preferences of the president. Dean Erwin Chemerinsky at the Berkeley School of Law has opined that President Donald Trump is trying to intimidate his critics into silence, and sadly, it's working. Chemerinsky lamented that he'd asked 197 law school deans to sign a petition condemning their government's efforts to punish lawyers, and only 79 would do so. Among those missing in action, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Chicago, Penn, Virginia, Duke, Michigan, Columbia, NYU, and Northwestern. And this is only one front in Trump's war to stifle dissent. He's also taken on the press. For instance, he sued ABC News for defamation after George Stephanopoulos, in a 2024 interview, repeatedly claimed that Trump had been, quote, found liable for rape. Stephanopoulos was wrong. But in my opinion, whether his comments were actionable under the New York Times versus Sullivan, that was probably worth fighting over. Instead, ABC settled for $15 million and an expression of regret. Trump has also sued CBS for $20 billion, claiming that its editing of a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris amounted to election interference. Reportedly, there's great dissent within CBS's Paramount Global over whether to settle the case, but with the company seeking to merge with Skydance Media, paying off Trump might seem like a rounding error. Meanwhile, many claim that both Apple and Meta have been cozying up to the White House, with Apple's Tim Cook announcing the company will invest $500 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years, and Meta's Mark Zuckerberg changing Facebook content policy in ways that would seem to please the president. And while we're at it, Trump has barred the Associated Press from the Oval Office and White House press pool because it won't follow the president's order changing the Gulf of Mexico name to the Gulf of America. The AP is challenging the ban in court, but so far not succeeded. Trump is also seeking to silence voices in academia and college campuses. More than 50 universities are being investigated for their DEI programs. If colleges aren't in compliance with the White House take on civil rights, they could lose federal funding. Trump has already pulled $400 million in grants at Columbia due to alleged inaction in protecting Jewish students. To get funding restored, Columbia gave in to the White House demands, including adopting a formal definition of anti-Semitism and changing its student protest policies. Then there's Princeton University. The Trump White House has suspended $210 million in research grants while the Department of Education investigates anti-Semitism at the school. The Trump administration has also made demands on Harvard to save their federal funding. They must end DEI and modify programs that allegedly fuel anti-Semitism. Same for Brown University. The White House there planning to freeze $510 million in federal funds. With all this happening, the president shows no signs of slowing down. Apparently, he wants to put everybody on notice. Attacking me and my policies, it's not cost-free. And if you don't think so, just try and find out. It's not like we weren't warned. He said a couple of years ago at CPAC, I am your warrior, I am your justice, I am your retribution. One thing's for sure, he is his own retribution. And as Hamlet said, the readiness is all. Which brings us back to Shakespeare and let's kill all the lawyers. Of course, the bard wasn't the only wordsmith to comment on the bar and to offer words that resonate today. The late, great Warren Zevon put it more simply. Bring lawyers, guns, and money. The shit has hit the fan.